I think a lot of people don't want the information so they can continue to have an excuse. That's a
Well,
lot.
hold on, Dame. Hold on. So, okay, yeah, you build a label from the ground up. Yeah, you generated millions of dollars. Yeah, you've gotten artists on the cover of, Double XL multiple times. Yeah, you had a partnership deal with a major label while remaining independent. Does that really mean you're more qualified than a random YouTuber with 5 subscribers to talk about the music business? Let's be real. What's going down is to add odds with EP&D podcast. We had to combine names. Logo's coming soon. Look like Dame wanted to jump in on that. Already, he's ready. He tweeted he was ready to talk some shit today. So I don't know if that's why you were ready to leap right into the shit. What's going on, Dame? What was that tweet about, by the way? what's the rant?
This episode is brought to you by Two Loss, the best music distributor in the world. So check it out. Right now, we still got the promo code PAIN, PAIN. Use that promo code, get 3 months free music distribution. And then we also have the Collab for the Crown contest going right now. It's a contest where you can potentially win up to $20,000. The total prize pool is $33,000, so that's $20,000 to first, $8,000 to second. Third prize is $5,000. It's cash. It's not like, hey, you get a deal with Two Loss that you now have to recoup. Nah, this is cash. Hopefully, the winners do work with our label services team, and we help you put out your project. But if you want to take that money, buy some beats with DJ Pain One, or some services with Erinn, or blow it on a coat, or whatever y'all want to do, a car, whatever, it's cash. I know a lot of these contests in the past, they'd be like, oh, $100,000, and then it turns out it's like a shady record deal that you get put in. But nah, it's straight cash. So make sure you get your entries in ASAP. twoloss.com/collab for the crown. So the tweet, I said I think the tweet was I normally keep it cool and humble, but today I gotta talk my shit. I ain't gonna talk too much shit. It's really just based off the comments. Like, I'm not one in particular, but like, I don't think people understand like my experience in this shit. Like, I've been working with independent creators since 2008, didn't have any music industry experience, built a label, with Hop and my brother, literally from the ground up. Like, I understand how to build community. Like, we built it fan by fan, then signed artists. But even to this day, like, I work with artists, all types of artists, right? Successful artists. Even today, if I look at my schedule, I think there's an artist that I'm talking to that has like 4,000 monthly listeners. I got the homie Ali Joseph coming through. He's at 700,000 monthly listeners. I got a call with a manager. He's got artists at various stages. So like, with all due respect, I probably talk to more artists than anybody watching this podcast does on a weekly basis. Like, I'm seeing viewpoint, not just my own experiences, but I'm seeing shit from so many different perspectives. So when you try to pigeonhole me into something, or say that he doesn't know this or he doesn't know that, I've probably seen it 10 times over. Like, I'm not looking at this from somebody that just jumped in the game yesterday. So 2008, what is that? That's now 15 plus years of experience, and still working with artists in various capacities to this day. I don't care if you believe me or not, because most of you aren't going to make it in music. And that's not me being shady. That's me just telling you the reality of the situation. And if you do decide to pivot, I hope that you pivot earlier rather than later, because you were destined to do something else in this life. Like, I want people to get the information as quick as possible, so that the ones that can figure it out, and the ones that need to pivot and to be a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, community activist, whatever you were meant to really be in this life, I want you to do that sooner rather than later, because not everybody's going to make it in music. So you can keep talking shit in the comments. You can call me dumb, but I have more experience than probably anybody that you know personally. And I'm not doing this because we make a lot of money. I'm actually doing this to help y'all, and my version of helping y'all. If something I'm doing is not helping people, I apologize, but that is I'm not selling anything. I've never sold a product. I've never click funneled and been like, hey, buy my course to do this. Like, we do this because we're genuinely trying to help people. And I'm not saying I know everything, but there's not that many people, and I can't think of anybody at the moment that has come back to me and be like, see, Dame, you were wrong. I can't think of anybody at the moment. Maybe that's happened. It's more so, Dame, you were right. And I don't even like I told you so moments, because if I have to say I told you so, that means we lost time, money, or both. It doesn't boost my ego when I have to say I told you so. It makes me feel bad. It does not boost my ego at all. And there's been way too many I told you so moments. Funk Volume cats have come back to me and said I had to say I told you so. That just means we lost out on an amazing opportunity. So I just had to talk my shit real quick, because you can look at the past. And I don't really feel like I still have a lot more to accomplish in this industry and now in television and film. So I always try to keep it cool and humble, because I feel like I haven't really done what I think I'm going to do. But when I see some of these comments, I'm like, I think a lot of people don't want the information so they can continue to have an excuse. That's a lot.
Hold on, Dave. Hold on. So, okay. Yeah, you build a label from the ground up. Yeah, you generated millions of dollars. Yeah, you've gotten artists on the cover of, Double XL multiple times. Yeah, you had a partnership deal with a major label while remaining independent. Does that really mean you're more qualified than a random YouTuber with 5 subscribers to talk about the music business? Let's be real.
But I mean, the crazy thing is, it's not just like it's comments of people that I know. I'm like, not that I really know personally, but it ain't just random. I mean, it's a lot of that. It's definitely a lot of that. But I really think it's a situation where people just want to have an excuse. They don't want the real information, because as soon as you get all the information, now it's on you, right? You can't point the finger anywhere else, because you got all the information. So who can you blame now? And people want somebody to blame for their lack of success. And if that's you, it's not, I mean, it doesn't hurt me none if that's what's happening, but you should really look yourself in the mirror and be like, look, is that what I'm doing? But I hope that a lot of people pivot, because it's gonna end bad for a lot of people. Not really bad. I feel like if you approach the music industry the right way, even if you swing and miss, you could use that experience and be very successful doing something else, right? Because we're not doing things differently that other businesses have to do. Like if you learn marketing, if you learn how to build your community, if you develop your professional presence and build relationships, you can take all of that experience and be successful doing something else. So that's, kind of like the silver lining. I know it sounds like crazy when I keep telling people that most people aren't going to make it in music, but if you pursue it the way that I think you should pursue it, it's not like a lost 10 years or a lost 5 years, lost 7 years, whatever. Like you could take that experience and be like, oh, snap. Matter of fact, there's a cat that hit me up recently that wants me to be on his real estate podcast because he came from music. That now that I've been in it for a long time, like I've seen a lot of people pivot. There's another cat that used to work at Monster that's raising like $100 million because he has a successful business that helps people start their businesses, right? It's kind of like a better LegalZoom that I hope to be able to work with, or at least partner with, because obviously a lot of artists need to set up their businesses. But anyway, that's it. I know I just talked for hella long, but yeah, that was just me.
Yo, I can say something to this too. I feel like because you're such a behind the scenes type dude, people don't realize how much weight you hold. And it's not like you're flaunting your resume, but everywhere I go, people are like, yo, is Dame coming? Like the industry wants you around because you're like that dude. So I feel like people, because you're so accessible on this podcast and on Twitter and just able to, like, people can see you, their assumption is that you're more of a talking head. But Dame is a workhorse, y'all. Like Dame is actually, he's in the office right now. Dame wakes up earlier than all of us and he wakes up to come do this podcast because he's on the West Coast. Me and Payne are on Central Time. So he's 2 hours ahead, ready to go, doing the podcast, does a full day of work, then does stuff with Ja. Like this dude is impacting culture, not just the music industry. He's impacting culture and is still giving the game and doesn't have to. Like, this don't do nothing for Dame except it only does stuff for y'all. For me, it helps me because I'm learning the whole time. It raises my visibility as a young executive. It helps me to acquire more relationships. I'm benefiting way more being on this podcast than Dame is. So if y'all feel like, I just think that y'all need to Google this dude and then Google some of the companies that he's run, started, created. Like, Dame is not lightweight by any means. Dame is one of the heaviest hitting executives, and this is no gas, in the music industry. If you don't know Dame, I question how long you've been in the music industry. And his reputation is above reproach. Everybody who has anybody who's a decent human, artist or executive, rocks with Dame because he's a solid guy, but he's actually knows the game, y'all. So everybody who's hating, like, there's no reason to hate. Get to know Dame. Like, it will benefit your life. If you disagree, that's one thing. Disagreeing is cool because me and Payne, we don't always agree on everything. It's not about agreeing with everything he's saying. It's about saying there's wisdom here. Let me learn. Let me understand what he's talking about and let me dive in. Don't just try to, I feel like the moment people immediately jump to discrediting someone, they don't actually have a real argument. Like, I look at some of the comments. If you jump to just discrediting me because you disagree, then I'm like, you don't have a valid thing to say. You don't have to discredit somebody to disagree with them.
You know what's ironic? People will say, and I think Dame and I trade off on this hat because obviously, realistically speaking, statistically speaking, the music business is hard to get into. Not everyone's going to make it, blah, blah, blah. We're sharing resources to try to increase the likelihood that more people are going to make it. But sometimes we speak plainly about what's going on in the music business. What's ironic, though, is that people will go in the comment section and say, oh, Dame is so negative. He's such a piece of shit. We hate Dame. And then I went online and basically, I thought it was a really kind tweet where I said, not everyone who's talented wants to be in the music business, and that's fine. They don't have to be, just be at peace with your decision. And people are like, what the fuck? You're acting like the music business is easy to get into, Payne. You're such a piece of shit. It was this woman who was like, you're so privileged. Your privilege is showing. I'm just like, I wonder what privilege she's talking about. And she's like, the privilege that you assume everybody is not working hard and willing to starve and happily doing it. I'm just like, that's not privilege. You guys got to stop throwing that word around. But it's funny because it doesn't matter what you do. People will give you the same criticism. Because on another day, when I say, hey, most musicians have terrible marketing plans, suddenly I'm thrown on the Dame side. I'm like, no, most people have terrible marketing plans on the one hand. On the other hand, it's still very possible if you work smart and have talent and make great music and move in a professional manner, in a consistent manner, that you will find success in the music business or whatever creative pursuit you're interested in. People just can't win. And in an ideal world, the detractors would just come right out and say, look, I'm just angry at Dame because that's how I am. I watch sports and my blood pressure rises and my doctor tells me that I'm at risk for some kind of cardiac event. Or, you know what? I'm angry at Payne because, I feel like my life is just really not going the way I planned it. And it's frustrating that people aren't validating my talents the way I think they should. That would be incredibly honest and admirable, but instead it's like, man, if you made it, I know you must have drank some goat blood and licked Doja Cat's feet in an Illuminati ritual. The only people that get famous, it's just like, all right, it's entertaining to kind of sarcastically engage sometimes, but for the most part, it's just boring because you just see the same narratives and the same attitudes cycle through people. But the other thing too is like, obviously the three of us are friends. I don't know why people think I'm going to be cool with any type of slander towards the two of you. I remember there's a fan who was like, yo, Soul can't rap. He's a piece of shit. He raps like shit. He's lucky to get DJ Payne 1 beats. And he tagged me and I'm like, I don't know what kind of way you were raised, but were you raised where like you could be walking down the street and someone would walk up to you and say, your sister's a whore and you're going to be cool with it? Well, he's not talking about you. He's talking about your sister. Like, come on, man. So I
like that guy who like went in on Dame for like it was like hours via tweet. And Dane kept being like, essentially like, what are you upset about? Like Dame was trying to talk about a topic and this guy was trying to like, he was just going in and tagging both me and you, and then had the audacity to DM me a couple of days later and was like, because I blocked him on Twitter. I was like, I don't even want to see your tweets. He DM'd me on Instagram and was like, yo, we got to connect. We got to get together. And I just never responded. I'm like, what? Like, one, you scare me. You're emotionally unstable. You spent hours going in on a grown man on Twitter who was trying to understand your frustration. And you DM'd me after I was tagged in all of those, and you think I want to get with you? And the question that Dame asked, which was very valid, was because the guy came for him and he was like, what do you do in the industry? If somebody were to ask me that, I wouldn't take that as an insult. I'd be like, oh, I do this, this, and this, because it's Twitter. Nobody knows what anybody does. Our bios are only 140 characters. So that's not an insult to me. So for him to go in and then to come and be like, I'm like, one, I don't know what you do aside from be angry. Two, you're weird. Like, yeah, we're a collective. Like, why would I ever want to rock with somebody who's hating on the people that I spend a lot of time with?
Yeah. And I was genuinely trying to understand, like, okay, what do you do not as a challenge, but so that I can understand possibly your viewpoint or your level of experience, see kind of where I need to meet you at. But it not only happened like publicly, like on tweets, but then it went to the DMs, and I didn't respond to any of them. But there were multiple DMs on Twitter, and then it went to Instagram DMs, and you went there. I'm like, yo, this cat is definitely not.
It's fatal attraction. I mean, that's real. And I think people, here's a bit of advice. Get famous first and then reveal what a sick, toxic person you are second. That's the smarter thing to do. A lot of artists, I swear,
well,
this is
wild considering what's going on right now.
No, you got to go to therapy first. Like,
well, that's too much work. Come on, David. People aren't actually, they don't want to change their lives. No, but my point is a lot of people who recently have been tweeting me frustrated with how their careers are going are the same ones who are willing to cuss out a stranger on Twitter out of nowhere. I've never jumped on, like John Fetterman. Yeah, I cussed him out the other day. He's not reading my tweets. Other than elected officials who are waving the flag for child murder, I'm never going to jump on someone's tweets and cuss them out. But if I post something that people don't like, I see them jumping, calling names and getting aggressive. And it's like, maybe this is part of the reason you're not succeeding in the music business, because everyone sees how unstable you are. If you act like this around every person you interact with, every time there's something that's not perfectly in line with what you desire, you react and get violent and get aggressive and get offensive, then yeah, that it makes sense. It makes sense.
Well, one, Erinn Payne, I appreciate the kind words, but I still feel like I have so much to do because Funk Volume, like, crashed and burned in the most ridiculous fashion ever. Like, I still feel like I got, whether it's in music or television and film, like because I felt like we only reached like 25% of our potential, and I feel bad that it ended in that way. But even in that, even the Funk Volume fans that come back and have negative things to say, like, I don't even think they realize that Hop hit me back like 2-3 years after, and we sat down and had a conversation that's on YouTube. He never promoted it, and that's why I don't speak to him to this day. But like, even he sat down and talked about, gave a more accurate, I still don't think our conversation was like 100% accurate, but in order to keep him at the table and not chase him out or start fighting him, I kept it cool. And we talked a little bit more about accurately like what happened, as opposed to like the video that he released at the time just to get attention. But yeah, I mean, I wake up at 5:15 every morning. Obviously, I'm in the Two Lost office. Nobody comes in till 10, so I have my quiet time to do the podcast. But I kind of enjoy it, and it makes sure that we're having current conversations. Right, this is one of the ways that I keep current with what's going on. In addition to actually like working and talking with artists, Like, this is one of the ways that I try to keep current with what's going on, so I don't become that guy that's just like, like Joe Budden, right? Joe Budden talks about independent music business, but he not in it day to day, so he don't know what's happening. So when he says, he said something on the Math Hoffa podcast. He said, those that are truly independent or are being successful, like, they won't tell you, right? There's a lot of independent artists that will tell you exactly what they're doing. I have conversations weekly on the Independent Living podcast, and that's exactly what they do. I sat down with LaRussell, and he basically answered there's no question where they're like, hey, Dame, I'm not comfortable answering that. So when Joe Budden talks about the independent music space, he has no fucking idea what he's talking about. I mean, there might be some things here and there where he's right, but a lot of things he's super wrong because he's a podcaster. He's a successful podcaster now. So
I think he knows what he's doing too, because even on that podcast, he starts out, he was like, he looks at the camera and says, don't fact check me on any of this, and then jumps in. He's just looking for clips. He's a great podcaster. He is not a music business educator. So I feel like because he to me is reminiscent of old heads who are still on the speaking circuit, who were successful in the 90s and the early 2000s and maybe worked at Def Jam or something. And they're like, artists just need to, and it's like, bro, like, okay.
Oh no, they're way worse than Joe. Oh my God, those people, Erinn. Oh.
Well, I'm saying it's reminiscent of that to me, because it's like, Joe, respectfully, you were a successful rapper, but you were signed, and you were part of an era where CDs were still very much a thing. That's where I started my career, where like the first several times I ever charted on Billboard, it was off of CDs. So it's not that long ago. I started in the industry 13 years ago. So this is not like a shot at his age. I'm just saying back then it was way different. We could literally have door-to-door campaigns, like knock on people's doors like, yo, we're a local band. And we used to get write-ups in the newspaper, right? In the local newspaper. So we take the newspaper article and be like, yo, like, don't you want to support us? We're about to go on tour. Like, just the whole like mom and pop thing. And that helped us chart. This is a way different era. I'm working with influencers. I'm working with a rapper who functions more as an influencer, phenomenal rapper, but like, she's got millions of followers across several platforms, and we're still consistently fighting to get 500,000 monthly listeners. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just a way different industry. So for me, respect to Joe Budden as a podcaster and for what he's built, but I'm not listening to him for music business advice. Even if he's right sometimes, I'm like, cool. Like, anybody can make it in the goal a couple times if you shoot enough shots. He talks every day, all day. So occasionally he's going to land on something because he overheard something, but like, no. I just don't. If you're looking for music like, that's what I feel like. That's what they do. This is why they don't like you, Dane. They listen to Joe Budden just randomly pull something out of his ass, and then they come back to you and they're like, Dame's a fake, Dame's a fraud. Apparently Joe Budden has to be more right because he's more successful as a podcaster or because he's a famous rapper. But it's like, as an industry professional, like, respect to Joe Budden again, but Joe Budden is an exact example of what Dame is talking about. Pivot into something that makes sense. If Joe Budden was still trying to rap, he would be stuck. And he was trying to rap for a long time and then realized that podcasting, being a personality, was way more beneficial than rapping for him. So like, he's a classic example of, if you're not making it like you want to, pivot.
Yeah. You have to be very careful taking advice from artists, period, whether they're successful now or not. And the reason for that is a lot of artists have blind spots to what even made them successful, right? Or they did it a certain way. There's a lot of different paths to becoming successful, and what works for them may not work for you. So when I sit down with some of these artists, I'm not suggesting you do it exactly how they do it. I'm having these conversations to uncover so that people understand like how they did it, and there might be certain things you can pick from what they did that you can apply to your journey. It's so important to just learn the business in its totality so you can identify frauds for yourself, where you can identify when Joe Budden says something correct, you can understand why that is, or when he says something wrong, you can be like, that doesn't make sense because I know this and I learned this from this. So it's a lot of people giving information, us included. Obviously I feel like we have a different perspective because we're living and breathing it, and I think we're approaching it from different angles, and you hear the conversation in real time, and if Payne disagrees or if Erinn disagrees, you can kind of see a more robust conversation. But be very careful taking advice from artists, because any artist, even though Russ, like I would say with Russ, I probably agree with him a high percentage of the time, 80-90% of the time, but then he'll say something that I think where he's overlooking like because a lot of things got him to where he is. I think he sometimes downplays how talented he is. Like, it's not easy to make the consistent quality of song that he's able to do. And he was able to do it like, years ago. Like that's what I heard. And that's why I wanted to sign him to Funk Volume. Cause I was like, every time I push play, I was like, there's something unique about his voice. There's something, crazy in the quality and the consistency. There's something unique in his look. Like you don't look like Russ. So his look plays into a lot of how, women see him and the success that he's having with a female demographic. So you may not be able to pull off the Russ. He got the long hair. I think one of his eyes is a different color. He's got a swag that you may not have. So you can't just.
I think Russ would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, probably. I mean, but the things that make successful artists, you might not have the exact same thing. And even if you run the same play, some of that play might be expired or the algorithm.
No, but you know what? People aren't even running the same play as Russ. Whenever I see the people that are like, I did what Russ did, I'm like, well, no, you didn't. First of all, you didn't. You're on like month 6. And in addition to that, your music isn't as good as his. So you missed the most important part. But can we quickly pivot? I don't want to talk too much about this whole Fat Joe controversy, which doesn't seem like a controversy.